I'm recording this in my kitchen, lights off, phone on the table, the mic pointed at a wooden box that used to be my grandfather's. I set it there on purpose because whenever the box is near, the air in this room changes. It gets heavier, like before a thunderstorm. The box holds his navy pins, a folded flag, and, what really matters for tonight, his diary and a bundle of typed sheets bound with a corroded paperclip. I tell myself that I'm doing this as a matter of family record. I also know that's not true. I'm doing it because the silence around this story feels worse than the story itself. My grandfather served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He wasn't a captain or a war hero. He was an electrician's mate. Wires, fuses, generators. The practical, invisible parts of a ship that only matter when they fail. In our family album, he looks like every other sailor in 1943. The same smile, the same cap tilted at the same angle, the same way of standing that says, I belong to something larger than myself. He almost never talked about the war. When I was a kid, I thought that meant he didn't see anything worth telling. Now I think it meant he saw something he was told never to repeat. I found his diary this past winter after my mother asked me to clear out the attic. The cedar box was tucked under fiberglass insulation and WWII magazines. Inside were ribbons, the folded flag, his discharge papers, and at the very bottom, a hardback notebook wrapped in wax paper and an envelope stamped in red. Classified. Returned to Navy Office, Norfolk. No one ever returned it. The notebook's first pages are routine. Voltage checks, parts requisitions, sketches of junction boxes. I recognize his handwriting, small, block letters, the kind of print that's learned in a workshop, not a classroom. But toward the middle, the tone changes. Dates appear in the margins, times down to the minute, coordinates, and then sentences that don't belong in an electrician's log. I am going to read some of those entries. I'll mark where the diary ends and my own voice resumes. If you know anything about the Philadelphia experiment, you'll hear the beats you expect. The destroyer escort USS Eldridge, DE-173, October 1943. The alleged attempt to render a ship invisible to radar, maybe more than radar, and the Navy's denials that anything like Project Rainbow ever existed. You'll also hear what my grandfather says occurred at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, Dock 8, at exactly 08:57 on the morning of October 28, 1943. Before I begin, I need to be absolutely clear about something. My grandfather was not on the Eldridge. He served on the USS Engstrom, moored near the Eldridge that fall, sharing the same yard, the same coffee, the same rumors. He was close enough to hear a horn, to feel a vibration through the planks of a pier, to smell ozone in clear air, and according to these pages, close enough to see water behave in a way water doesn't. I open the notebook. The paper smells faintly metallic like old coins. The first entry that matters is dated October 26th. Diary, October 26, 1943, 1940 hours. Officer says, there's to be a calibration on E-173 in 48 hours. Orders for our section, stand by for power fluctuations. I ask why we'd see those from another ship. No answer. Degaussing talk from yard men. New wiring being run under the pier. Bigger cable than I've seen for just a coil check. Saw a civilian in a gray suit on the Eldridge's quarterdeck. Not Navy. Spoke German or something like it under his breath. Hughes says I'm hearing things. I tell him the hair on my arms stood up when the man passed. I pause. Degaussing is real. Magnetic field reduction to protect against mines. It uses heavy cable and power. Civilians could be present for technical reasons. None of that is strange on its own. What is strange is what he writes next, on October 27th. Diary, October 27th, 22:05. Spent the afternoon on the Engstrom's main bus. Frequency wandered. All the compasses on B-deck spun a degree or two, even with engines secured. Hughes says it's the crane. Crane's dead. I can feel something like a hum in my teeth when I lean on the bulkhead. Not in the ears, inside the bones. Night Watch says Eldridge ran lights check twice. Lights too bright. Looks green in the fog, even though it's clear. When I say green, I mean he underlined it. Twice. There are typed pages, too, on onion skin, the kind that turns brittle with time. Notes, not an official report. They're stamped Return to Norfolk, and someone, maybe my grandfather, penciled E-173 in the corner. On the third sheet, there's a line. Eyewitness 57, field increase, visible corona. Do not look directly. That phrase, do not look directly, repeats later. It becomes almost like a prayer, or a protocol. The next entry is October 28th. It's longer. I read it with my grandfather's steady handwriting in my head like he's whispering in this unlit kitchen. Diary, October 28th, 0831, clear morning. Sky thin blue, river flat. Civilian again on E-173, gray suit. He carries a small metal case like a doctor. Dock lights flicker once at airweight 22. Substation reports, testing interference. I check our switchboard, amp steady, but something like a wave passes through the panel at intervals, a low thrumming. 3 seconds on, 5 seconds off. Hughes jokes about a heartbeat. I don't laugh. Airweight 54, men on the Eldridge string cable along the pier. The insulation is pale, almost white. Never seen that type. Coleman says they got it through some university back home. Says someone figured how to push noise around the ship. He says it like a joke. I can smell the sea like it's rained. But the planks are dry. My tongue tastes like a penny. 0856. Our radio picks up nothing but snow across the band. I switch to 6.8 megacycles, dead. Then a hum that swells and dips, like a dynamo being wound, except it isn't ours. My hand on the panel shakes, though the deck is still. The hair on my forearms lifts, as if a charge is passing by just above the skin. I tell Hughes to keep his eyes down if the lights go. Weight 57. Horn. Short, not our horn. A light like a flash of welding, except it fills the edge of my vision. I remember my father saying never to look at an arc. I don't, and I think that saves me. The deck trembles as if something heavy shifts its weight. The water around E-173 looks wrong, like heat above asphalt, except it's the river. It ripples away from the hull hard, then pulls back in, as if the ship is a stone being dropped into a lake, then the hole left behind eating the wake. Green color around the hull, not paint. A kind of curtain. I see boots through the green, like a man standing inside a fog. Then there's just the pier, no ship. He stops the paragraph there. He doesn't use a period. He draws a line across the page like a breath. Airweight 57. Seconds later, the air cracks like thunder with no cloud. A smell like metal and summer rain. Hughes says Jesus, but it sounds far away. Everyone ducks. I keep my head down because of the note, do not look directly. It isn't my note. It came with the typed pages last night, folded under my pillow with no name. The panel in front of me goes dead, then surges so hard, the meter pegs. The needle bends. I have to look up because the light changes. The world turns the color of old bottles. A blue-green glass color, then clear again. 8:58. There are shouts. A man on the pier points where the ship was. Swearing, he can still see it if he looks in the corner of his eye. Someone else says the Eldridge is in Norfolk. Another laughs. The radio comes back, but nothing makes sense. Words all laid over one another, like a tape played backward. One voice says Engstrom, in a way I do not care for. Hughes grips my arm so hard I bruise and says, "Do you feel that?" Or 59. The feeling is like being on the lower deck when you pass over deep water. Except we aren't moving. My teeth ache. The fillings buzz. There is a taste like the time I licked a 9-volt battery for a dare. The pier boards creak, A crane cable sings for no reason. Downriver, a gull falls into the water, as if someone swatted it. 0901. The Eldridge is back. He underlines that sentence twice. It returns the way a man returns to a room he forgot he left. No wake, which is wrong. There is a haze around it like summer heat. A sailor on the bow leans forward and screams. But his scream sounds like it's coming from underwater. I see 3 men on deck. One is holding his head. One is on his knees. One stands still as a mast. A smell like burned meat and copper. I don't want to write what I saw in the forward well. I didn't see a man welded into the steel. I didn't. The Navy man in the gray suit says do not look directly. And I do not. I do not. The next lines degrade. His letters get larger. A smear crosses the page, and I wonder if it's a tear or if his pen bled when the panel surged again. He writes, 9:04. Order from yard to secure power and remain at stations. Men with stretchers come down the pier. 2 stretchers go aboard, 3 come off. I think that's wrong math. A petty officer in a cap I don't know stops and speaks to me in a calm voice like a doctor. He asks whether I looked. I say no. He nods once and says good. He looks 25 and older than my father's grave. He goes up the gangway and does not come back down by the time my watch ends. He does not describe anything else from that hour. He picks up that evening. 19:10. We are told we saw nothing. We are told this was routine. Hughes says routine like a bad word and laughs until he coughs. They take our meters. They take the burned fuses. They don't take the note that says do not look directly, because it was tucked under my shirt. The civilian in gray crosses the pier, and for a second he looks like someone from the old country. The way my mother's uncle looked in a photograph. Same mustache, same eyes that do not blink often enough. He says, "Gut na ben" to no one, or maybe to the river. A man from the yard puts an envelope in my hand. "Norfolk," he says, "you'll return that." I do not return anything. I close the diary and look at the typed pages, the ones with the Return to Norfolk stamp. On the last sheet, a thin, fused length of metal wire is taped to the corner under brittle cellophane. The tag, in pencil, E173. When I flex the page even slightly, the wire hums against the paper, and I swear I feel the vibration through my fingertips. I flip ahead. There are entries for the days after. He writes of headaches, of compasses that wander when they shouldn't. Of a frequency he writes as 6.8 megacycles, what we'd call megahertz, that he says he hears like a tone underneath other sounds. He writes of rivets that are warm to the touch when the engines are cold. He writes of a gull that lands on the rail and then simply isn't there. He also writes that the Eldridge's crew is quieter than any crew he's met. And he writes that 3 men transfer off in the following week for nerves. Here's October 30th, 10:12. We pass the pier by boat. Hughes keeps his eyes on the deck. Says he sees a shape like a hole in the river, where the Eldridge was, like a place the sunlight refuses. I tell him to stop talking. He does not. That night, he sleeps with a crucifix and I hear him whisper in his mother's language, though he's never spoken it before. And then, 2 weeks later, a calm, almost resigned line. November 12th, official story is degassing. I will repeat that story afast. I don't know if what I saw is something we did, or something that came through us. I know the smell of rain when there are no clouds. I know the taste of copper on my tongue. I know the note under my pillow. Do not look directly. It was good advice. The diary leaves WWII soon after. Pages turn to post-war repairs, jobs, groceries, names. But in 1957, he writes one final entry about it. April 7, 1957. The static is back tonight. I found the old frequency like a man finds a street he swore he forgot. 6.8. It comes in a rhythm, like breath. I turned off the radio. Still heard it for a while. Might be in the bones, might be in the house. I don't think it's over. He underlines over 3 times. I stop reading and look at the kitchen window. My reflection is dim, a floating oval where my face should be, delayed by the glass and the dark outside. I am aware of my breathing and the soft tick from the baseboard heat. I realize my watch stopped again at 8:57, the minute my grandfather recorded the field increase. I tap the glass. The second hand starts, stutters, and lands back where it was. I want this to be dramatics. I want this to be atmospheric detail that I'm adding because I'm turning a family myth into a story. But a week after finding the diary, I bought a used shortwave radio at a pawn shop and spun the dial at night until I taught myself the map of the bands. The first 3 nights, 6.8 megahertz is empty. The 4th night I hear a hum, not a voice and not pure static, but a vibration I feel in my jaw more than in my ear. It comes and goes with the rhythm my grandfather wrote. 3 seconds, then 5. 3, then 5. A heartbeat or a pump. The house seems to lean toward it, like a plant turning to sun. I record it on my phone. In the morning, I play it back in the car. The car speakers render it as pure noise. I put on headphones. Under the noise, for less than a second, a voice tries to form a word. I can't say what the word is without feeling ridiculous. But if I had to choose, I'd say it sounds like someone saying our ship's name through a long pipe full of water, Engstrom. I start looking for corroboration. Officially, there is none. The Navy repeats the same language they've used for decades. No Rainbow Project. No radar invisibility. No teleportation. No men fused into bulkheads. No vanishing. Just degaussing, which is routine and well documented. The USS Eldridge's war diary shows her far from Philadelphia on the precise days that conspiracy books point to. There are letters from Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende, who claimed to see the event from the deck of the SS Andrew Furuseth, and later recanted or contradicted himself so often that no part of his testimony can be relied on without irony. But the typed sheets in our cedar box, thin onion skin with "Return to Norfolk" stamped in red, don't read like fever dreams. They read like measurements, times, notes about field strength and panel behavior, and power slumps at nearby substations. The dates match my grandfather's entries. The handwriting in the margins is his. The paper smells faintly like the diary. Pennies and weather. One sheet lists 3 substations around the yard and a single phrase: testing interference resolved. On a map I find in a library book, the 3 substations triangulate Dock 8. I overlay satellite imagery on my phone and see the rectangle of water where Dock 8 remains, now half-silted, cranes like skeletal fingers. I drive there on a Sunday when the lot is empty. I stand with the fence-link pattern pressed into my face and breathe the industrial river. Ships move farther north, harmless, every day, too far to photograph well on my phone. When I close my eyes, my ears fill with a bass line. It could be trucks. It could be the wind in the crane arms. It could be my blood. Right as I decide I've made the whole thing up, a set of pier lights flicker once and steady. I hold up my phone and count without knowing why. At 3, there's a pause, then 5. 3, then 5. 3, then 5. A heartbeat or a pump. That night, when I play the recording, the phone picks up nothing but a hiss. I turn up the gain until the hiss becomes a living thing. Until I think I hear a word that might be a ship's name. I tell myself I need more than sounds. I call an archives tech I know and ask, as a favor, whether he'll shine UV across the typed pages and tell me if my eyes are tricking me. He does. He says the ink fluoresces in a way he doesn't see with ordinary carbon ribbons from that era. Like the page has been irradiated, though he laughs when he says it, because irradiated paper is not a thing people say about family heirlooms. He also says my grandfather's signature on the discharge papers looks normal. The weird stuff is only on the technical notes, he says. Whatever that means. I find one more person, the son of a man who served on the Engstrom. He lives in Maine and answers the phone like I'm a debt collector. When I say our fathers served on the same ship, he goes quiet and then says, "He said there was fog that burned." "Fog?" I ask. "His phrase," he says. "Fog that burned the skin if it touched you." He had a patch on his wrist till he died. Could have been anything. He said, "Don't look at it if it starts." "Look at what?" He hangs up and calls me back 5 minutes later. He said not to look directly, he says. And then, like he's embarrassed, that was the phrase, like the sun. He offers to mail me a photograph of his father's dog tags. When the envelope arrives, the tags are warped. Not bent, but bubbled, like a piece of metal that got hot from the inside. I tell myself that dogs' tags can warp for a lot of reasons. I tell myself a lot of things. One afternoon, after months of telling myself things, I make a stupid decision and point the car south to Norfolk. Because if this story has a geography, it's a long, straight line from Philadelphia to Norfolk and back again. I park at a public access pier and walk to the end with the wind pushing my jacket against my chest. I've brought the pawn shop radio. I tune it to 6.8 and lean against a piling. At 8:57 p.m., which is not historically significant but feels right because it's the time in my grandfather's notes, the pier seems to step sideways. I know that's not a sentence a sober adult should say. The boards don't move, the rail doesn't move, but the dark water shifts, like jam in a jar that's been tapped. The radio goes from hiss to nothing. For a full second, nothing. Not silence, nothing. Then a sound like metal bending far below, and then a voice so distorted, it's more shape than sound. "Do not look directly." All of the hair on my arms rises. I don't look at the water. I stare at the grain in the pier board until my eyes water. The radio squalls. A gull shrieks. Somewhere behind me, a sodium vapor lamp blinks, and in the half-second before it steadies again, I see the rail and the water and my own shadow and something like a darker shade nested inside my shadow, as if something is standing where I stand. 3 steps backward, and I'm running, and I'm laughing because I don't know what else to do. I sit in the car shaking. I tell myself the voice was interference. I tell myself the lamp stuttered, because they do that when they're old. I tell myself that if I looked at the water, I would have seen nothing at all. I drive home, and the watch stops at 8:57 again, though I've replaced the battery twice. And when I set it right, it stops again the next night at the same minute, like the watch insists that this is what time it is now. I stop taking the radio out at night because sleep matters if you have to pretend to be normal in the daytime. I put the diary back in the cedar box, and then I take it out and then I put it back again. Sometimes I leave it half open like a mouth. Sometimes I lay my hand on the cover and whisper, "I won't look," as if I'm speaking to a person. A week goes by, then 2. The house wakes up to its old creaks. The hum fades to the normal hum of a fridge and a distant highway. In the quiet, my grandfather's words gain weight. I read the last lines again because they're the only advice he gives. I don't know if what I saw is something we did or something that came through us. I know the smell of rain when there are no clouds. I know the taste of copper on my tongue. I know the note, "Do not look directly." It was good advice. There's one more item in the box I didn't mention at the start. A small brass compass. The glass is cracked. The needle swings freely, even when I set it on a stone countertop away from anything electrical. On the back, scratched so lightly it's almost invisible, are 4 characters, E173. Then a word that could be return, or returned or return. The last letter cuts into the brass like the knife slipped. I set the compass on the diary and make a rule for myself. If the needle ever stops, I'm done. I'll tape the box shut and put it back under the insulation and let the mice keep it company until the house belongs to someone else. It doesn't stop. It spins, slow and steady like a planet with no friction. I try to end the recording there because ending on a spinning compass is poetic in a way that makes videos perform well. But something in me resents that. If this were just about clicks, I'd invent the rest. And you can tell when a voice is lying because the lie is too clean. So instead, I'll tell you the part I've deleted and re-recorded 3 times because it sounds like I'm trying to be clever. In the oldest family photo album, there's a picture dated 1946 in blue ballpoint, though the photo paper's older and the scrawl looks added later. The picture shows my grandmother holding a baby on the front stoop of a house that isn't the one we grew up in. My grandfather stands behind them in a shirt with the sleeves rolled, looking tired and happy in the way men look when a war ends and a life begins. The baby wears a white knit cap and a square face like mine. If I cover the rest and look only at the eyes, I see my own eyes looking out from a time when my parents weren't born. The problem is obvious. I was born in 1988. My mother confirms the date on the back of the photo, November 1946, and laughs at the idea that the baby looks like me. Babies all look alike, she says, and then, gentler, you're seeing what you want to see. Maybe. I asked the archive tech about photo paper once. He said it's possible to misdate a print. He said people write dates on things years later and get them wrong. He said the camera angle can play tricks when you're looking for yourself. He said a lot of sane things I should accept. What I don't tell him is that when I hold the photograph under bright light and tilt it just so, the white knit cap of the baby reflects a faint green tint, like bottle glass. I keep my mouth shut about that because a person has to live in the world. Sometimes at 0857 the baseboard heater clicks, and the house sighs, and something in the walls hums in a way that makes the dishes in the cabinet ring if they're touching. I move the plates apart so the sound won't betray me to myself. The compass spins. The watch waits. The diary rests under my palm, like an animal that has chosen not to move. I tell myself the Navy is right and this is all misunderstanding and mischief. I tell myself Carl Allen was a hoaxer, and the SS Andrew Furuseth didn't see anything but fog banks and war nerves. I tell myself degassing fields can make a man feel strange if he stands in one. I tell myself that no ship can be in 2 places at once, and that if our eyes saw a vanishing, it was conscience overriding sight. Then I flip the page to the last typed sheet, the one with the small fused wire taped to the corner. The sheet has a typed line I haven't read yet out loud because it feels too on the nose for a narrator trying to be credible. The line is set apart from the rest, centered, as if whoever typed it thought it might someday be the only thing worth keeping. Resonance achieved, space not crossed but folded, field collapse at 08.57, reoccurrence probable at harmonic intervals. I don't know what harmonic intervals means to the man who typed it in 1943. To my untrained ear, it sounds like the explanation a liar gives when he needs a phrase that sounds like physics. It also sounds like the thing my body recognizes, the 3 on, 5 off, the pulse that doesn't belong to anything I can point to. If you ask me what the Philadelphia experiment was, after I read 100 articles and held this paper and stood at Dock 8 with a fence's cold metal pressed into my cheek, I'd say it wasn't invisibility, and it wasn't teleportation, and it wasn't time travel, not the way science fiction says. I'd say it was an attempt to hide a ship by persuading the space around it to ignore that the ship existed. And I'd say sometimes, when space tries to forget something, it forgets the wrong thing. Maybe the Eldridge didn't go to Norfolk in those minutes. Maybe Norfolk came to the Eldridge. Maybe the river got thinner, and the ship fell through into a version of the same river that was colder and greener, and left fingerprints on the men who stood in it. Or maybe my grandfather inhaled transformer smoke one morning in 1943, and it lived behind his eyes for the rest of his life, And now, it lives behind mine. This is the part where a video needs an ending. I owe you one. Here it is. I place the diary back in the cedar box. I lay the compass on top. The needle spins a polite, indifferent circle. I close the lid halfway. I set my phone down so you can hear the ordinary quiet of a house that isn't special to anyone but the people who know where the creaky stair is. I breathe in. I breathe out. I tell myself, I will not look at the clock. I tell myself I will not check the radio. I tell myself I know better than to feed old ghosts. From the box comes the barest whisper of metal against wood, like a ring sliding across a table. Then, as if a transformer somewhere has woken up, the room leans. Not the floor, not the wall, the room. The edges soften. The window, the chair back, the white plate I didn't dry well enough. The air smells like summer rain with no clouds. My tongue tastes like pennies. I shut my eyes. I do not look directly. The feeling passes, leaving behind a silence so clean I hear my own pulse in the cartilage of my ear. When I open my eyes, the room is the room. The box is the box. The watch on the counter is stopped at 08:57. I wind it because I am a person who lives in a world where watches wind, and kitchens are just kitchens, and the Navy tells the truth about things like degaussing. I wind it and set it down and say out loud, "That's enough." My voice sounds like my grandfather's when he told my mother to come inside out of the rain. I pick up the phone and stop the recording. I name the file with the date and a word I'll recognize. I put the diary back in the box and the box back under the sink for tonight, because the attic feels too far away and the basement feels too near. I tell myself that on another night I'll drive to a friend's place and talk about sports and have a beer and be the kind of man who doesn't inherit anything but eye color. I turn to the window to make sure the latch is set. In the glass, I see the kitchen, delayed by a fraction of a second the way glass always delays. My own reflection meets my eye, like a trick you teach yourself to feel normal again. Behind me, over my shoulder, the shadow of a man in a dark uniform stands where the chair is. An afterimage, I tell myself. A trick of the light, a harmonic interval. I hold still and listen, just long enough to know if I am making this up. Somewhere far away, or inside the bones of the house, or in the line between my pulse and the second hand of a cheap watch, a hum rises and falls and rises again. The window shows me my face. The shadow shows me a cap tilted at a Navy angle. The hum says nothing at all. I shut the light. The window goes black. The kitchen returns to being a kitchen. The box under the sink is only a box. I walk upstairs, repeating the last line my grandfather wrote as if it were a verse. Do not look directly. If you're waiting for proof, for a document I can scan or a name I can give you to call, I won't pretend I have it. All I have is paper that buzzes under my hand when it shouldn't, a compass that doesn't decide which way is north, a watch that likes Wood 57 better than any other minute, and a family story I'm tired of holding by myself. Maybe the Philadelphia experiment is a badly told joke, a pile of hoaxes with melted dog tags and men who wanted to be part of a larger myth. Maybe the Navy did nothing worse than mislabel a power test. Maybe a man in a gray suit in 1943 looked like a ghost, because war does that to people who haven't slept. Or maybe a river remembers the shape of a ship the way a scar remembers the shape of a wound. Either way, I'm done keeping the secret. I'm done pretending that a note isn't still tucked in the crease of an old electrician's diary that my grandmother kept under towels because she liked the smell of cedar. I'm done pretending I don't hear it at night. 3 seconds on, 5 off. Like breath, like a pump, like something that isn't finished. I say goodnight to a house that doesn't answer and walk down the hall. In my pocket, the compass taps once against my thigh as if to ask a question. I don't take it out. I don't look at it. I don't look at anything that might look back. I sleep, if sleep is the word, with the rhythm of the thing inside the walls stepping in time with my heart. When I wake, the watch on the nightstand says, "Or 8:57 again." And for the first time, I'm not sure whether it's broken or right.